Has your partner been sexually assaulted before? This is going to be one of the most controversial topics I ever do on this channel. In today's video, we're going to go over some signs you can look out for to determine if your partner has had a traumatic experience like that in the past, and more importantly, ways that you can help her to get over that experience. My name is Stirling Cooper. I'm an award-winning adult film star, former high-class male companion, and I'm here to help you improve your sex life. Now, this topic of sexual assault is no joke, and obviously, it is not something that I run around condoning in any way, shape, or form. So, for anyone who might happen to be a complete idiot watching this video or any of my videos, I wanted to make that crystal clear. Now, part of the reason why I'm able to talk on this topic is because I've had some partners in the past who have confided in me that they've had some rather traumatic experiences like this. And together we were able to help her get over those experiences. So that is my goal with this video today for you guys. Now, we're going to go over two different kinds of signs that your partner has had a grape experience, has been sexually assaulted. So we're going to go over some very obvious, clear-cut physical and emotional tells, which can basically confirm if she's had a traumatic experience like this. And we're going to go over some more subtle hints that aren't always 100% indicators that she's had this kind of an experience before, but they tend to correlate. So there's some, the ones I'm going to talk about to start with are not 100% of the time, but there's a high correlation between them. And then the more physical, visceral, emotional signs we're going to talk about at the end are 100% indicators that she has had that kind of an experience before. So those are the ones that you will absolutely be able to recognize, and then moving forward, help her get over that experience, which we'll also talk about in the video. So I don't mean to sound like an asshole when I say these first few signs, but in my experience, these are pretty decent indicators of whether or not a woman has had a, traumatic sexual experience of some kind. Those tend to be, is she a rabid militant feminist? Not just a feminist in the sense of she says she's a feminist, but she's militant, out there picketing, out there debating people, out being very aggressive in her feminism, being very confrontational in her feminism, being very man-hatey in her feminism. That is a particular sign in a lot of circumstances. Again, these first few these signs I'm going to give you are not always 100% guarantees, but they can be hints that it is something she's experienced before. So there's that. Does she run around throwing out the phrase, "consent is sexy"? Now, I'm not trying to split hairs or anything here, but if you've ever read any female erotica, things like 50 Shades of Grey, things like Nancy Friday's My Secret Garden, you'll know that a lot of women fantasize about grape scenarios. But it's purely a fantasy. That's the whole point of it being a fantasy, is that it's in her head and she can control it, right? So she's in control of being out of control in these fantasies in her head. It's very, very commonly reported. If you don't believe me, go check out Nancy Friday's My Secret Garden. Now, the kind of women who fantasize about that and talk about that typically haven't actually experienced that for the most part. So the opposite of that rather tends to be an indicator. If she's running around saying things like consent is sexy, typically she has had some kind, maybe not necessarily like a full-blown experience, but she's had some kind of negative experience with consent, right? So she's trying to reinforce this frame of consent is sexy, right? Now, the other, not a 100% sign, but a decent indicator is this a woman who's like a younger woman with a Karen haircut? That sounds really absurd and superficial, but so is she a younger woman with like a Karen haircut or a bunch of tattoos or some kind of body disfiguration procedure done to her, like, you know, nose rings or whatever it might be, or hair color dyeing, fluorescent hair colors, these sort of things? Here's the reasoning behind it. When a woman goes through a very traumatic experience like that, it becomes like her physical beauty is, she turns her physical beauty, well, she kind of deliberately destroys her physical beauty in a way to kind of get back at men. And then that manifests itself as ugly haircuts, hair colors, body dysmorphia, this kind of things. So, again, this isn't a 100% clear-cut sign, but it is one of many indicators you can pick up on that there's a potential for her to have had that kind of experience in the past. So basically a woman trying to destroy her own beauty typically comes from either feminist brainwashing or a traumatic experience with a dude in a sexual context. Now, the more 100% clear-cut sign that you could look out for to tell if your partner has had a sexual assault experience in the past is if you start to get sort of more dominant and heavy-handed in the bedroom, in a consensual way, obviously. Does she have a very, very visceral, negative, and immediate reaction to it? For example, if you, say, pinned her hands down here by her side while, you know, you're having sex in a missionary position, you just take her hands, put her there, right? For most women, that is a totally fine thing to do that actually really turns them on, really arouses them, gets them excited. You'll see this look in their eyes. For most women, when you do that to a woman, pin her hands in like that during the act of sex, you'll see this, excited look in her eye. Now, if a woman has had a bad sexual experience in the past, a traumatic one, if you do something like that, you'll see the complete opposite. You'll see her tense up. You'll see a look of fear in her eyes, or a look of worry or anger come over her. Like I said, she'll tense up and she'll be very, very quick to tell you to not do that. She'll be very, very quick to sort of move her hands or get her hands out of the way. Same can go for choking. Same can go for choking. If she's had a very, very bad experience in the past with that. And the same can really go with sort of manhandling her around the bedroom to a degree. But for the most part, those first two, pinning hands and choking, those will be indicators. If she has a very, very negative visceral reaction to that, that is a very, very strong indicator that she has had some kind of a traumatic sexual experience in the past. Now, more importantly, how can we help her get through that mentally? How can we help her get over that experience and help her get through that trauma, and then help her live a happy, healthy sex life moving forwards? Now, this is not something that's typically going to happen quickly. This is going to be like a long-term process that you'll work through with your partner. So you basically have to encourage her to open up about it to you at some point. So she has to trust you. She has to trust you and respect you and understand that you're there to, you know, you've got her best interest at heart. You're there to take care of her. You're there to look after her. And for the most part, you basically love her. You have to make sure that she, in every sexual context, that she feels safe and not judged. And aftercare is a very, very important part of this. Cuddling, holding her, making her sleep on your chest, making her feel safe every time she is in a naked sexual context with you. And especially after the fact, that aftercare. So if you do ever happen to baby step towards being, maybe as she starts to trust you more, gets more comfortable with you, okay, maybe you can start to do things a little bit more heavy-handed. Cool. But if you do take those steps, you always make sure that she feels safe and she's comfortable after the fact with aftercare. So cuddling, holding her, whispering nice things in her ear, whatever. But the general concept of aftercare is very, very, very important for helping her get over that traumatic experience, and more importantly, being able to open up and explore new sexual experiences with you, the guy she trusts. Here is a frame that you can add into your relationship once you understand and once you know what she's been through. You can say, do you want this experience to have power over you still? Or do you want to work through this together and overcome this together? That is a very, very useful psychological framework for you to work forwards from. So you're telling her, this ain't going to have power over you anymore. We're going to get over this, and together we're moving forward. Cool? So she's trusted you. She's come out with all this information. She's revealed all this information to you. And you make her feel not judged. You make her feel safe. You make her feel comfortable. Make sure she trusts you. And then you can start exploring new sexual experiences. What you'll find is, if you have successfully helped her overcome this trauma, at a certain point, this is a long-term thing. This isn't, this doesn't happen in like 1 or 2 sexual encounters. This is like a relationship context. But if you've helped her through this trauma and she orgasms with you, she will probably cry during that orgasm. Once she's kind of like gotten over all this trauma and you've helped her get through this trauma eventually, you make her orgasm at a certain point, or maybe you're doing something a bit more heavy-handed that was previously out of her comfort zone, and now she's comfortable enough to try it with you and she orgasms, she's probably going to cry during that orgasm. That is actually a good sign that you've helped her overcome this really burdensome, traumatic emotional experience. And basically, yeah, you've opened up a whole new world for her. Now, what you might find is that women who've had this kind of traumatic experience may be more difficult to get to climax, may be more difficult for them to orgasm. And that's just one of many different mental roadblocks that women can face that prevents them from orgasming. If you'd like to learn more, then check out this video right here.